The Screwtape Letters. Letter number 22. My dear Wormwood, so, your man is in love, and in the worst kind he could possibly have fallen into, and with a girl who does not even appear in the report you sent me. You may be interested to learn that the little misunderstanding with the secret police, which you tried to raise about some unguarded expressions in one of my letters, has been tidied over. If you were reckoning on that to secure my good offices, you will find yourself mistaken. You shall pay for that as well as for your other blunders. Meanwhile, I enclose a little booklet just issued on the new House of Correction for Incompetent Tempters. It is profusely illustrated, and you will not find a dull page in it. I have not looked up this girl's dossier, and am horrified at what I find. I have looked up this girl's dossier, and am horrified at what I find. Not only a Christian, but such a Christian. A vile, sneaking, simpering, demure, monosyllabic, mouse-like, watery, insignificant, virginal bread-and-butter miss. The little brute. She makes me vomit. She stinks and scalds through the very pages of the dossier. It drives me mad the way the world has worsened. We'd have had her to the arena in the old days. That's what her sort is made for. Not that she'd do much good there either. Two-faced little cheat. I know the sort. Who looks as if she'd face the sight of blood and then dies with a smile. A cheat every way. Looks as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, and yet has a satirical wit. The sort of creature who would find me funny. Filthy, insipid little prude, and yet ready to fall into this booby's arms like any other breeding animal. Why doesn't the enemy blast her for it? If he's so moonstruck by virginity, instead of looking on her there, grinning, he's a hedonist at heart. All those fasts and vigils and stakes and crosses are only a facade. We're only like foam on the seashore. Out at sea, out in his sea, there is pleasure and more pleasure. He makes no secret of it. At his right hand are pleasures for evermore. Ugh! I don't think he has the least inkling of that high and austere mystery to which we rise in the miserific vision. He's vulgar, Wormwood. He has a bourgeois mind. He has filled his world full of pleasures. There are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. Sleeping, washing, eating, drinking, making love, playing, praying, working. Everything has to be twisted before it's any use to us. We fight under cruel disadvantages. Nothing is natural on our side. Not that that excuses you. I'll settle with you presently. You've always hated me and been insolent when you dared. Then, of course, he gets to know this woman's family and whole circle. Could you not see that the very house she lives in is one that he never ought to have entered? The whole place reeks of that deadly odor. The very gardener, though he's been only there 5 years, is beginning to acquire it. Even guests, after a weekend visit, carry some of the smell away from them. The dog and cat are tainted with it, and a house full of the impenetrable mystery. We are certain, it is a matter of first principles, that each member of the family must in some way be making capital out of the others. But we can't find out how. They guard as jealously as the enemy himself the secret of what really lies behind this pretense of disinterested love. The whole house and garden is one vast obscenity. It bears a sickening resemblance to the description one human writer made of heaven, the regions where there is only life, and therefore all that is not music is silence. Music and silence? How I detest them both! How thankful we should be that ever since our father entered hell, though longer ago than humans reckoning in light use could express, no square inch of infernal space, no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces, but all has been occupied by noise. Noise. optimism, the audible expression of all that is exalted, ruthless, and virile. Noise which alone defends us from silly qualms, despairing scruples and impossible desires. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. We've already made great strides in this direction. As regards the earth, the melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end. But I admit, we are not yet loud enough or anything like it. Research is in progress. Meanwhile, you disgusting little. Here, the manuscript breaks off and is resumed in a different hand. In the heat of composition, I find that I have inadvertently allowed myself to assume the form of a large centipede. I am accordingly dictating the rest to my secretary. Now that the transformation is complete, I recognize it as a periodical phenomenon. Some rumor it has reached the humans, and a distorted account of it appears in the poet Milton, with the ridiculous addition that such changes of shape are a punishment imposed on us by the enemy. A more modern writer, someone with a name like Shaw, has, however, grasped the truth. Transformation proceeds from within, and is a glorious manifestation of that life force which our Father would worship if he worshipped anything but himself. In my present form, I feel even more anxious to see you, to unite you to myself in an indissoluble embrace. Signed, Toadpipe. For his abysmal sublimity, Under Secretary Screwtape. Letter 23. My dear Wormwood, through this girl and her disgusting family, the patient is now getting to know more Christians every day, and very intelligent Christians too. For a long time it will be quite impossible to remove spirituality from his life. Very well then, we must corrupt it. No doubt you have often practiced transforming yourself into an angel of light as a parade ground exercise. Now is the time to do it in the face of the enemy. The world and the flesh have failed us. A third power remains. And success of this third kind is the most glorious of all. A spoiled saint, a Pharisee, an inquisitor, or a magician makes better sport in hell than a more common tyrant or debauchee. Looking round your patient's new friends, I find that the best point of attack would be the borderline between theology and politics. Several of his new friends are very much alive to the social implications of their religion. That in itself is a bad thing, but good can be made of it. You will find that a good many Christian political writers think that Christianity began going wrong and departing from the doctrines found at a very early stage. Now, this idea must be used by us to encourage once again the conception of a historical Jesus to be found by clearing away later accretions and perversions, and then to be contrasted with the whole Christian tradition. In the last generation, we promoted the construction of such a historical Jesus on liberal and humanitarian lines. We are now putting forward a new historical Jesus on Marxian, catastrophic, and revolutionary lines. The advantages of these constructions, which we intend to change every 30 years or so, are manifold. In the first place, they all tend to direct men's devotion to something which does not exist. For each historical Jesus is unhistorical. The documents say that what they say and cannot be added to. Each new historical Jesus, therefore, has to be got out of them by suppression of one point and exaggeration of another, and by that sort of guessing, brilliant is the adjective, we teach humans to apply to it, on which no one would risk 10 shillings in his ordinary life, but which is enough to produce a crop of new Napoleons, new Shakespeares, new Swifts in every publisher's autumn list. In the second place, all such constructions place the importance of their historical Jesus in some peculiar theory. He is supposed to have promulgated He has to be a great man in the modern sense of the word, one standing a terminus of some centrifugal or unbalanced line of thought, a crank, vending a panacea. We thus distract men's mind from who he is and what he did. We first make him solely a teacher and then conceal the very substantial agreement between his teachings and those of other great moral teachers. For humans must not be allowed to notice that all great moralists are sent by the enemy, not to inform men, but to remind them, to restate primeval moral platitudes against our continual concealment of them. We make the sophists. He raises up a Socrates to answer them. Our third aim is, by these constructions, to destroy devotional life, for the real presence of the enemy, otherwise experienced by men in prayer and sacrament. We substitute a merely probable, remote, shadowy, and uncouth figure, one who spoke a strange language and died a long time ago. Such an object cannot in fact be worshipped. Instead of the Creator, adored by its creature, you soon have merely a leader acclaimed by a partisan, and finally a distinguished character approved by a judicious historian. And fourthly, besides being unhistorical in the Jesus it depicts, religion of this kind is false to history in another sense. No nation and few individuals are really brought into the enemy's camp by the historical study of the biographical Jesus, simply as biography. Indeed, materials for a full biography have been withheld from men. The earliest converts were converted by a single historical fact, the resurrection, and a single theological doctrine, the redemption, operating on a sense of sin which they already had, and sin not against some new fancy law produced as a novelty by a great man, but against the old, platitudinous, universal moral law, which they had been taught by their new nurses and mothers. The Gospels came later, and were written not to make Christians, but to edify Christians already made. The historical Jesus, then, however dangerous he may seem to be to us at some particular point, is always to be encouraged. About the general connection between Christianity and politics, our position is more delicate. Certainly, we do not want men to allow their Christianity to flow over into their political life, for the establishment of anything like a really just society would be a major disaster. On the other hand, we do want, and want very much, to make men treat Christianity as a means, preferably of course, as a means to their own advancement, but, failing that, as a means to anything, even social justice. The thing to do is to get a man at first to value social justice as a thing which the enemy demands, and then work him on to the stage at which he values Christianity because it produces social justice. For the enemy will not be used as a convenience. Men or nations who think they can revive the faith in order to make a good society might just as well think they can use the stairs of heaven as a shortcut to the nearest chemist's shop. Fortunately, it is quite easy to coax humans around this little corner. Only today I have found a passage in a Christian writer where he recommends his own version of Christianity on the ground that only such a faith can outlast the death of old cultures and the birth of new civilizations. You see the little rift. Believe this not because it's true, but for some other reason. That's the game. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.